Hello, and welcome to the 27th video in my Punishing Graven lore series. Today we'll be covering the 19th chapter of the main story, A New Divide. While Grey Raven fought tooth and nail to save the surface, the rest of Babylonia wasn't sitting around helpless, least of all our resident hot-tempered engineer. Now we take a glimpse into what happened with the engineering forces Karenina and Teddy, as they forge their own path forward, with the pinnacle of human science as their guiding light. Now without any further delay, let's dive into Chapter 19, A New Divide. After the appearance of the twins, air-to-ground travel became nearly impossible for even the best of pilots, so the engineering force was tasked with finding a more hardware-focused solution. Karenina spent her time developing stronger aircraft and more powerful engines alongside Teddy, her vice captain, and former daughter of the prestigious Norman mining family. While working, they are approached by Hassan, Nicola, and Collins serving as Corona's ambassador. Thanks to the Omega file, the Science Council was able to develop the Omega prototype, but to fully utilize it, a zero-point reactor is required. The three want Karenina and her team to handle its restoration, as they are the foremost authorities on energy research. And while zero-point reactors are inherently risky, if Karenina refuses, there's no one better qualified to handle the responsibility. A week had passed since that day, and in that short amount of time, Karenina and Teddy arrived on the lunar base and perfected the Omega prototype. Karenina had two conditions for agreeing to work with Corona. First, that those who stayed behind would continue to improve the engines, and second, a brand new frame. The director of the base, a man named Yarha, arrives to help Karen test her new frame, which was crafted using the base model Corona developed while studying Luna. As they leave, another member of Corona named Litz turns around to Collins, expressing how he's against giving away something so precious. But Collins enlightens him with some old words of wisdom. The more elaborate the bait, the bigger the catch. And in this case, that catch is a functional reactor. After testing, Karen is forced to commend Collins on the quality of the frame, and he says that they have made many new advancements since her grandfather's time. She takes the bait, asking if they knew each other, and Collins does her one better, leading the way to her grandfather's old research lab, ignoring the very vocal protest of the other Corona associates. After walking through a dozen different containment levels, Collins opens the door, revealing the Omega prototype, and suspended in the air above it is a long-lost angel. Karenina takes aim, calling on the soldiers to help eliminate one of mankind's enemies, but instead the Corona soldiers turn their weapons on her. Collins eases everyone down, and explains that everything in the lab was built specifically for her, for the information in Luna's mind. Fire was once an unexplained danger to the human race, as were constructs, until science harnessed them for human advancement, and he believes ascendants are the next step on that path. And just as the moon saw the development of constructs, it will witness the birth of man-made ascendants. Even with Karenina being the most experienced in zero-point research, that doesn't mean much considering the entire field of study is still a mystery. For scientists, every success is built upon hundreds, or even thousands of failures, and zero-point research lacks precedent to even know if she's on the right track. But a breakthrough only needs to happen once. Babylonia's gravity engine was hooked up to the reactor, as it only uses zero-point energy to function. Karen shouts to everyone to stop, as her pencil ever so slowly begins to float. At her mark, Teddy ups the output, and everything in the room goes weightless. On the other side of the base, Collins is brought to tears as the next phase of his plan is complete. With all the staff gathered, he has Luna injected with energy, and the girl opens her eyes. She tries connecting to the Ascension network to no avail. She has been abandoned after her actions in City 75, yet the virus within her has not turned her corrupted, confusing her greatly. As it stands, she is no different than a construct with the ability to absorb the virus, and here on the moon, there is none. She looks at the Omega weapon behind her, surprised humans have come so far, then closes her eyes. Her will is shattered. Even if she mustered the strength to escape, she has nowhere to go. Her comrades are dead or missing, and her home destroyed. She has nothing left. Yarha sits in the lab designing the new Imperia frame, flailing in a panic as Karen manages to sneak up on him. She questions why such a fearful person would take on such a risky job, and it's because he's quite fond of the frame's soon-to-be user, with her finally learning the specialized frame is for Liv. She questions why Liv would do this despite the danger, wondering if this is the necessary sacrifice that always seems to rear its head. This comment gets Luna's attention, and she questions the girl, asking what she would do. Humans now have access to the infinite energy they were seeking for so long, and now that it's here, can it bring hope without sacrifice? While she doesn't have the answer, she remembers her grandfather's lessons. No matter what trials befall humans, they will always learn from it, conquer it, and use it for the betterment of mankind. Back on the surface, Roland sits under a tree folding a paper rabbit when Cinderella appears to bring him to Vonnegut. Finally, it's time for him to receive his promised reward. Vonnegut reveals that Luna is being kept on the moon, and as for his transportation, after interrogating a Coronal soldier, Voodoo learned of a hidden base with a starship capable of reaching the moon. Vonnegut explains that Luna has lost the power of an agent, but not her status as one, and her capture has provided humanity the data to create quite a troublesome device in the Omega weapon. To put an end to it, he wants Roland to save her, and if he can't, Cinderella hands over a case with a stem cell from the Hive Mother. In the hands of the Babylonians, Luna could not be allowed to exist. If Roland deems that Luna is no longer worth saving, that cell will consume the base, and Luna along with it. Roland takes the container, asking when he leaves, only to have Voodoo step forward and correct him. Not you, we. As the two depart, back in the wilderness, a white-haired figure finds Roland's rabbit, reading the message hidden within before taking off to follow their trail. After word of the twins' defeat made its way to the lunar base, Karenina spent her last remaining days swapping out parts of the Omega weapon, attempting to hide the more specialized hardware pieces from Corono. Finding Luna conscious, she tells her the news, and she is surprised to find Lucia is still fighting on behalf of humanity, even through all the suffering they have caused her, but her sister's safety ultimately eases her mood ever so slightly. Seeing her face, Karenina makes it clear Lucia will never know Luna's whereabouts, as information on agents is highly confidential. On Earth, Roland arrives at the base, fighting his way through the coronal constructs. In the base's hangar, he finds Alpha and Voodoo locked in combat and joins in. She grabs his whip, pulling him close, handing over a small storage unit before sending him flying towards the wall. He crashes into the ground yet remains unharmed, a testament to his impeccable performance. Voodoo falls for their plan, handing Roland the stem cell and sending him to the ship as she stays to fight. He grabs the container and makes his retreat, flashing Alpha a last-minute smile. Roland takes off into the sky, fighting through the barrier of hetero creatures surrounding the planet and feeding them to the Hive Mother cell. Afterwards, he sits on the bow of the ship, thinking. Luna was his entire reason for living, and he will do anything to help her reach her goal. But if she herself has lost the will to continue on, would there be any point in saving her? Karenina, Teddy, and the rest of the engineers finish their preparations when a Coronal researcher informs them the reactor's output is decreasing. Karen agrees to take a look and is forced to fight through the coronal constructs blocking the reactor, where she is attacked by Corrupted. Karenina fights her way back to Yarha and the others, as the base is overrun by the Corrupted test models used to build Imperia. She calls Teddy to help evacuate the engineers and Coronal soldiers, while she heads to find the source of the infection. She breaches the reactor and finds it has the highest concentration of virus on base, and finds the body of a long-dead researcher. In his hands are folders of documents with the signature of her grandfather, along with an old-school cassette tape. On it are the recordings of the base's experiments and its final day. Back when the Inver device was still in its beginning stages, adequate testing required the use of punishing virus, so they used the reactor to manufacture an infinitesimally small amount of it. While extremely rash, it led them to eventually create rushed prototypes of the Inver devices that, while functional, had extremely low success rates, resulting in thousands of construct failures and deaths on the operating table. Coronal then forced the researchers to use machines to speed up production, machines that could not detect even the smallest amounts of virus, resulting in leaks that spread throughout the base. Eventually, only Karenina's grandfather, Dr. Colin, and a junior researcher were left alive. The man put Colin in a pod bound for Earth and led the remaining Corrupted to the reactor core, where they would be imprisoned. Back in Babylonia, Rebecca, Collins, Litz, and Leonardo Norman, Teddy's older brother who was sent to attend on behalf of the family, make their preparations for the World Government meeting. After the success of Imperia, Collins hopes the rest of Parliament will see the benefit of his ascendant research, and possibly listen to his plans for human ascension. But when looking through Litz's proposal, he is left speechless. The outline is a plan for using the reactor to shoot Babylonia into deeper space, nothing like what he had planned, and angered by his betrayal, Collins lashes out. Litz makes it clear that this was always the plan. He works for Corono, but not for Collins, and the organization has decided Collins' research on ascendance is both too costly and dangerous, so it will be postponed indefinitely. All of this comes as a complete shock to Collins, and Liz reminds him that to make a big catch, you need not be stingy with your bait. and there is no bigger catch than the preservation of humanity. After getting back to Babylonia, Commandant fell unconscious due to immense virus exposure, with Liv changing back into her Eclipse frame, soon falling into a coma herself, due to the impact of the frame and her fight against the twins. He has Simon take him to Liv's medical bay for a visit, as she once did for him, and while there, Simon brings up Karenina. At the World Government Conference, the representatives of humanity gather together once again to decide the best path for humanity. While Babylonia did gain a victory after developing the Omega weapon and specialized frame, the cost for achieving these feats was simply too high. Lid steps up to offer his proposal of abandoning Earth, citing Babylonia was originally built as a colony ship, but after the outbreak and loss of the zero-point reactors, there wasn't an energy source strong enough to power them in deep space. After these concerns are brought up, Litz reveals that there is in fact another functional reactor located on the moon, and calls for a vote to leave Earth. His proposal garners overwhelming support, and right before it's made official, Hassan receives an emergency distress call from the moon. Karenina tries shutting off the zero-point engine manually, but the gravity waves coming off of it are too chaotic. One wrong step would tear her apart. One of the corrupted from earlier is flung into the ceiling, cracking it from the inside, and she uses this vulnerability to break through to the surface. After reaching the command center, she finds Yarha, Teddy, and the others, dragging them to the terminal, only to learn a remote shutdown is also impossible. Energy input to the reactor is rising, meaning more virus is produced, infecting more of the engine's control systems. The only news is that the waves won't reach the lab itself since they are contracting rather than expanding. But the news isn't good. The gravity waves are increasing in density, and will do so until the moon implodes, sending lunar debris hurling towards Earth, naturally reducing the lab and its occupants to space dust. Logically, the only choice is to destroy the engine, but can she really shoulder the blame of destroying humanity's hope for tomorrow? Not wanting to make the choice on her own, she sends her message to Babylonia. After receiving the distress call, Hassan orders a recess to decide what course of action to take, with Litz convinced the entire thing is a bit too coincidental, but still believing in his ability to turn it around. The various council members reconvene after discussing Karenina's message, and Litz takes the stand, bringing up the very rational points that the reactor and engine are the pinnacle of what humanity has sacrificed so much for, and without more information, destroying it would be an insult to all those who died. Not even Hassan or Nicola can argue against these points, when a surprise guest makes his appearance. Some time ago, Collins approached Commandant and Simon about the Parliament situation, and that as it stands, Litz holds all the government support. There is currently no one to speak on Karenina's behalf, and even if she did save the base by destroying the reactor, the only welcome she would receive would be charges. Simon has been paying more attention to the meeting, which is why he brought up Karenina earlier. Naturally, Commandant refuses, and Collins calls his bluff, knowing Commandant would never leave an ally out to hang. As much as it pains him to admit, Collins is right. Commandant is far greedier than the man, and will save anyone and everyone. Sacrifice isn't an acceptable tactic in his book. The man extends his hand, and for the briefest of periods, the two are now allies. Commandant takes the stand, pointing out that Litz had never touched on the reliability of zero-point energy. He can't guarantee an incident won't occur out in space, and if it does, they won't have the Earth to back them up. He points out that all of his data has been verified by Karenina herself, and he stressed the value of her opinion, so Commandant questions why he refuses to accept her judgment now. That same authority has deemed the reactor too dangerous, and he's electing to ignore her warning. The reactor is one of humanity's crowning achievements, and many died to get here. But those tools are not the true hope of humanity. The true hope for the future doesn't rely on new frames or reactors, but on the people who can create such things, like those trapped on the moon. As the crowd listens to his speech, the flow of the meeting begins to sway, and Hassan calls him back, taking the stand once again, calling on the people to vote. After sending the message, Karenina has Teddy and Yarha lead the remaining engineers to the other side of the base to await rescue, while she fights her way to Luna's research lab. Luna waits, contemplating this new feeling of having an empty mind. Ever since she ascended, the network has been constantly making noise in her head, but now there's nothing but her own voice, and she still remains herself. The network has yet to execute her, as if it hasn't made up its mind. It's still thinking. Luna is suddenly forced awake, and unlike before, finds herself in immense pain, as the Omega weapon behind her was connected to the reactor. Karenina arrives at the lab to try and get Luna's help. If she can absorb the remaining virus, It should weaken the gravity waves just enough to let her reach the engine, but Luna refuses. Not only does she no longer possess the strength of an agent, she wouldn't help humanity anyway. It admits it would be better if she died here. That way her sisters will be free of her influence. On the outskirts of the base, Roland finally lands, shocked to find the scene is already in utter chaos. He concentrates on his link with Luna, sure she isn't too much further away, and makes his way to the lab. After leaving the lab, Karenina returns to the control station to find Teddy and the others stayed despite her orders, and are recording all relevant information on the reactor and engine, all in hopes of rebuilding it one day. Luna's words have shaken her resolve. Does she really have what it takes to deprive humanity of something they have fought so hard for? But Teddy reminds her that she's not bearing this responsibility alone. The researchers can't fight, but they can prepare for the future. So while Karen handles the engine, Teddy will handle the rest, because whether it be a battlefield or a research lab, everyone is fighting together. On the other side of the base, Roland reaches his destination, feeling as the connection between them steadily weakens, meaning Luna the agent is dying. He thinks about breaking her out, but it would only extend her life for the moment. The only one who can truly save Luna is Luna herself. If she has resigned herself to die here, nothing he does will matter. But he truly wants her to find a new reason to live on, and so does the person who gave him the storage container. Still having a job to do, he releases the embryo, and it crawls into the cracks of the walls, following the trail of 0-point energy. Karenina fights her way outside, following the blue glow of the engine, as gravity waves are continuing to build up around it. She overloads her hammer, intending to smash it from the air, when the gravity waves compress in front of her, blocking the attacks as if it's protecting itself. She fires at the debris surrounding it, finding the embryo steadily consuming the engine. Caught off guard, she's knocked to the ground, staring at the engine in complete shock as the engine stares back.
"人類の希望を壊す勇気があるの?" 俺はまだ弱いままなのか。
Staring at the sky, she finds a faint light carrying with it a message, as Babylonia uses its signal light to convey their decision 230,000 miles away. They have voted to destroy the engine. On the brink of death, Luna's mind forces her through her memories, failing to find a reason to go on, when a familiar voice sounds in her head.
Luna. 私が昇格者になった瞬間から人間に戻ることを諦めた。痛みと憎しみだけ忘れられずに。でもあなたの誕生日だけは忘れてないわ。生まれた証だけはいつまでも忘れられない。私の妹として生まれてきてくれて嬉しかった。この世に生まれてきてくれてありがとう、ルナ。生きる。
The file Roland inserted into the terminal was a recording of Alpha, wishing Luna a happy birthday. In the moment before her death, she fights back, having been overcome with emotion, just like the humans she despises so much. The gravity storm tears the lab apart, and as the air is sucked into the vacuum, she sees Alpha's present, a small frog-shaped charm hanging from the storage unit. She forces her hand out of her restraints to grab her present, realizing that humans, constructs, and ascendants might not be so different after all. Teddy repeats Babylonia's message over the speakers, and hearing that humans have chosen to sacrifice the engine, their hope, in favor of believing one of their own, she realized the past doesn't have to repeat itself, that there can be a change. She finally admits that she wants to be a bridge to connect to humanity, so that one day her dream can come true, to create a world where she and her sister can live in peace. She wonders if the network will ever allow such a thing to come to pass, but just like that commandant in City 75, she will do anything if it means achieving her goal. She reaches out to the network with all her remaining strength, and it accepts her new wish, this new possibility, and the virus surrounding the base flows into her, even faster than the Omega weapon can destroy it. She chooses to stay by the weapon, forcing it to draw more zero-point energy to match her output, as she whispers her wish to see humanity's potential. Karenina continues fighting off the monster, even managing to cut off its leg, intending to kill it as many times as it takes to keep it from regenerating. But oddly enough, no matter how hard it tries, it can't regrow its leg. Teddy tells her that a high percentage of the zero-point energy is being redirected to the Omega weapon, and she looks back at the lab, realizing Luna chose to live in the end. The creature's leg finally grows back, and it tries absorbing more energy as Karenina rushes forward. This is her best chance. Right now she's on the clock, and must destroy it before the engine goes critical. With the courage of knowing humanity is on her side, she tears the monster apart before it can regenerate, and it collapses to the ground. It charges all its remaining energy to the engine for one last strike, as Karenina brings down her hammer. The explosion of gravity waves sends her flying, and the creature crumbles back into dust. And with the battle finished, she makes her retreat. Karenina, Teddy, and the others who boarded Roland's ship manage to escape the base. Eventually, Roland was discovered, and the Babylonians are shot out of the life pods for rescue, as he takes his leave, piloting the ship back down to Earth. After Karenina's message was received, Bianca submitted her application to conduct a rescue, but was once again denied, as her presence is needed to investigate the appearance of human traitors on the surface. Another member of the Purifying Force, named Chico, had been investigating these traitors when traces of ascendants were found, prompting the threat level to be raised. Now Bianca and Chico head to investigate Cities 6 and 15 to resolve the issue. Back on the moon, Luna makes her way to the gravity engine, encasing it and herself in a condensed sphere of virus. She clutches Alpha's gift, and in a white flash, the built-up gravity waves detonate, launching the two back to Earth. Alright, and that wraps up Chapter 19 of the main story. Pretty short chapter, so not too much to speak on. We have a couple new characters. We got introduced to both Teddy and Leonardo, members of the Norman family. And we got introduced to Litz, who works in Corona, who gave us the wonderful gift of playing Collins like an absolute idiot. And we got to see what Karenina was doing for the past couple of months up in space. So, all in all, I think that's pretty good. The big thing is we finally have Luna's new path and her return back to Earth, so she can meet up with the rest of her Ascendant buddies. Yeah, that's about it. That's all I got for this chapter. I threw a little something special in there, and all parties willing, I'd love to do that more. Yeah, but I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you on the next video, where we cover Chapter 2 of the Floating Record Stories, Cinder Burns.